I'd love for you to kind of tell us a bit about yourself and your own motherhood journey, and the children that you have, and then kind of how that formed the path to doulahood.
Yeah, sure. So, like most people who go into this sort of line of work, I feel like we all have a real why, a real solid why of how we get into it. And I've got three children. We're a blended family. We've got my daughter who's currently 7. I have my son who is 12, and then I have a stepson who is 15. So, quite a broad range in age. And my stepson's been with us since he was almost 7. So, we've been through multiple changes in how we parent. We've had challenges of co-parenting, and when we had Lily, my 7-year-old, she was my daughter with my husband now. So that in itself had its own story of adjustment and just learning together as parents and co-parenting. And when I had Henry, my 12-year-old, I kind of went into that really unprepared. None of my friends at the time had children. I always thought that I would do some kind of birth education, but I hadn't booked anything in. Pretty easy pregnancy in my late 20s. And then I ended up having him incredibly early. So I had him at 28 weeks. So I was just on 6 months pregnant. He was in NICU for 3 months. And even though the reasons on why he came so early were not, there was no cause from me, and there was nothing we could have done to have changed that. I felt like I didn't know enough. I felt like I hadn't educated myself, and albeit I didn't have a lot of time leading up to it, I'd done nothing. I hadn't learned breastfeeding. I hadn't learned about birth. I hadn't learned about early parenthood.
Yeah,
And
6 months is like you still think,
you
you
have
kind of
so
cram that
much.
into the last few weeks, don't you?
Yeah. And a lot of people do, a lot of people kind of get to like the very last. It's never too late to learn, but the
Yeah.
earlier you start thinking about education, whether it's parenthood, all of the things, I think the better. And so after, he's perfectly healthy, and I'm very blessed that I have a really healthy boy, but I still felt like there was something that was missing for me. For me personally, I always, if I ever had children after Henry, that I would want to do things differently, and I really would want to educate myself. And it was actually my husband now who had recommended, when I fell pregnant with Lily, that we hire a doula. And I didn't know what a doula was. And a lot of people don't know what a doula is. And I was one of
No.
those people. And, I obviously did my research and thought, yep, that makes a lot of sense to hire a doula, someone who can sort of guide us and support us and be at home with me in labour. I was going into a VBAC as well. So just having someone that could give me information and direct me on where to go to try and achieve a VBAC. It's definitely not as easy to have a VBAC. So that was my experience
And
with having a
so you had her during the birth. She was going to be
yeah,
present during. Yeah.
yeah. So she was with me I hired a doula. Gosh, I was really prepared this time. So I started looking at about 4 months. Found her, and that's the other thing as well. It's not like you just had that support just for labor. It wasn't like I didn't have this relationship with her leading up to it. If I had any questions or if I wasn't sure of a feeling, even though she's not medical, she could still give me support and direct me if it was a medical question to the right places. And even to do with my obstetric care. Like I had my daughter at the Royal Women's in Randwick in Sydney, and even helping to guide me on, yeah, of course you can have a VBAC in the public system, and of course these are the great obstetricians who support VBACs in there. Let's ask to have one of those present for your birth, and that even in itself really
Yeah.
helped me.
And it's that continuity of care, right? Like in the public system, I had both of my kids in the public system, which was great. But it is just, who am I going to see today? Who levels of expertise,
Yeah,
different side minutes. It's just everyone you see is different, and it's such an overwhelming experience anyway.
that's right.
Um, and I had a VBAC with my second, and I was actually lucky I'd said yes to having a student follow me through the pregnancy.
Ah,
Like,
yes.
when I said yes, I kind of just did it because I felt bad. And I was like, yeah, of course you can follow me. But in the end, she was there on the day, and just having that familiar face and someone, a VBAC, having someone that can tell you what's happening as it's happening, because they look at you and they say, oh, she's a second time mum. She knows what she's doing. And it's like, no, it's a VBAC. I haven't done this before. I
That's
don't know what's
correct.
happening.
Yep.
So
You
I
haven't
can
had a
imagine it.
vaginal birth before. It's all new.
No.
And it's also, I think, takes the pressure off your partner if you are having your partner involved in your birth. They've also got to support, right? Like, you're not
Mm,
just kind of going to them and saying, oh, I don't know what I'm doing and I'm stressed and I'm feeling all these feelings. And there's someone there that's not family, it's not your friends, it's someone that you have actually hired, and that is their role, is to be your continuity of care, and that personal one-on-one support for you. So look, I absolutely loved it. And I found Lily's birth really healing for me, even though there was nothing I could have done to control the outcome of my birth with my first. For me personally, it felt incredibly healing. Um, and so that was kind of the first, I guess, stepping stones into my world of what a doula did. But I do think that there is this, I don't know the best way to say it, but this stigma that if you had a really great birth, that instantly means that you're going to have a successful postpartum. Or, that if you've had a traumatic birth, that means that you're going to have a bad postpartum. So I don't think the two necessarily always tie together. And even though I had a fantastic experience with my VBAC, I was a second time mum. So I kind of naively thought I had this in the bag. I thought I knew what I was doing with breastfeeding, all of the things. And to be honest, when I had Lily, she didn't stop crying. She had some health issues, intolerances to my milk. She cried nonstop from the moment she was born. And she had RSV, and then I caught RSV, so I was coughing consistently for 8 weeks. I ended up with quite a severe prolapse because of the coughing. It was nothing to do with my birth. All the relaxins in your body, RSV. I had quite a bad prolapse due to the coughing, and
can
I
you
didn't.
explain what a prolapse is?
Yeah, sure. So there's different types of prolapses, but it's basically when the organs, so your uterus, your bladder, or your bowel, or all, can drop low. So for some women, it can be common after birth to have a slight prolapse. This is actually something I talk a lot about in birth education when I'm doing my birth classes. I I truly, truly think that your 6 week postnatal checkup at the GP is not enough. That seeing a women's health specialist, so seeing someone that specializes in women's health who can do a check for you, regardless of whether you've had a cesarean or a vaginal birth, to check your pelvic floor and see if you've had a prolapse. So for me, my prolapse was bowel and bladder, which meant that, I found, we make those jokes to people like, oh, yeah, I do a little bit of a wee when I laugh. We joke about that, but that is a sign of a prolapse. And
Mm.
it's fine if it's only short lived. But if you, like myself, 6 months in, I couldn't even laugh with my children without wetting myself like a 90-year-old woman. It was really depressing. And I felt it was embarrassing. I was embarrassed as well. So, you can definitely go and get those checks done. And there's definitely things that can be done to help with pelvic floor exercises. And some people, like myself, actually needed to go and get surgery. So mine
Wow.
was so bad that I had to go and well, I chose to get prolapse surgery. You don't have to, but I didn't want to live like that.
Is that a physio? So at your 6 week check, is that the right time to get checked? And is it a physio that you would see, like a women's
Yeah.
health physio? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And the reason that I knew even about that was because I had spent 7 years working for Women in Focus Physio. So there's lots of fantastic women's physio clinics. That's who I'd worked with. So I'd seen lots of mums come through. I knew all of those things. And that was kind of another reason that led me into the doula work, because I saw lots of mums coming in with their babies. They were tired. They used to ask me lots of questions. I used to love holding the babies, helping them, allowing them to have an appointment and let their baby sleep on me, and give that advice. And when I was in the throes of motherhood with my daughter who didn't stop crying, my son who was 5 at the time who had just started kindergarten, and my stepson who had just moved in with us almost full time, he was starting a new school, moved in with us all within the same couple of weeks. And, we just keep getting on with it. And the only thing that kept me from staying in bed all day was the fact that I had two other children who needed me and I needed to step up and go to school. But underlying all of that, I was very fragile. I struggled to get out of bed to do those things. And I was really depressed. And I didn't realize at the time immediately that that's where I was at. It probably took me about 4 months, and I realized I was incredibly low. There were a few situations that happened that I remember turning to my husband and saying, "I need help. I can't do this." We didn't have a lot of support around us. Neither of us had our family living here, and you just tend to get on with it. And if you keep pushing all of that down for long enough, eventually it's going to rear its head, and you will have to face it and deal with it. And I did. I saw a GP and I went on a mental health care plan, and I started seeing a therapist who I still see to this day. I think that we're all a work in progress. So, and I find that incredibly healing for me now as well, just to be able to have, again, someone that I can talk to who isn't my immediate family, who's there to support me. And I remember thinking at that sort of 4 month mark, or, when I started seeing a therapist and whatnot, and piecing everything together, that I never ever wanted a mother to feel how I felt, which at the time was, even though I did have people around me that I could have asked. Elle, I'm sure you've been the same. You probably could have asked. There's people that will always help you, but at the time I felt completely alone. I felt like I was overwhelmed, and I didn't know where to go. I didn't know who could help me, and that was kind of what led me into doing that work as a doula, is being that support for someone during birth, but also being that support for someone in the postpartum. And when I decided to do that, I never thought that was the direction that I would go in life. And then as soon as it came to me, I thought, this is it. This is what I want to be doing. I want to be able to lift and support women and make them feel held, and hopefully make them know that there's always someone out there that will be with them through their postpartum and pregnancy.
It's so nice. And I think, it does really take the pressure off the partner as well, knowing that, the amount of times I'd throw to my partner being like, what's happening? What does this mean? This is how I'm feeling, and he's just like, ooh, like,
Yep.
he didn't
I don't
know.
know.
He couldn't have known. And he wouldn't, he didn't even know what to Google, let alone how to react to me or what advice to give
Yep.
me. And then they start walking on eggshells a bit, it's a hard time for them as well.
It is. It is a
So
really hard time for the
yeah,
partners, and
it
they don't.
is.
And I feel like you're right. That eggshell comment is so true, because they're in that fragility of, well, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but I actually don't even know what to say. And to be honest, like, hormones play a huge part in postpartum as
Yeah.
well.
They honestly can't say the right thing, honestly.
No.
Most of the time I couldn't say the right. When I was having my breastfeeding issues with Ben, I remember looking to Andrew for support, and whatever he said was incorrect. He would say, try again, or try this way. Don't you give me advice, mate. Like, where are your bloody useful boobs? But he was just trying to be helpful. And if he had said nothing, that would have also annoyed me as well. So,
It's funny, I
yeah.
find that when I'm supporting women in birth, that I warn them when we're meeting up and when we're getting closer to the birth, and I say to the partner, "Now, please don't be offended if you go in and do the exact same thing that I've just done. It might be a pressure point, or it might be like a touch of the hair or a handhold, and they push you away." Because if you think about it, I don't know if you're like this, but when I am with my girlfriends, there's no way that I would say some of the things that I say to my partner to my girlfriends. And I think when you're in those spaces of like fight or flight, you lash
Yeah,
out at your partner much more so
totally.
than what you would with, a good friend. And I do like to think that your doula does become, they're a part of they're part of a really personal time in your life, right? In labor, birth, early postpartum, it's a really private and sacred time, and you become their friend. I know it's
Yeah.
a business, but you become their friend. And so, the partners are in there and they get pushed away, and then you feel like there's nothing that they can say is right. And it's true. They can't, but they're there
Mm.
and they're present and they're showing up. And,
Yeah.
to have someone else there that can actually buff that, and be a buffer is sometimes nice as well.
I remember doing my labor with Patrick, which was the VBAC, and it was I think he was the wrong way around, which no one knew, so it was like a real intense back
I
labor,
was just about to say that would have been pretty uncomfortable.
um, and yeah, Andrew. bless his little cottons, couldn't have done anything to help me. I was just so mad. And, when like the gas just stops working and it just kind of becomes a chew toy, it was at that point. And they came and got him and they were like, we need to send you for a COVID test downstairs, because it was at that point. Then I think they did one on me while I was
Yeah,
laboring. At
fantastic.
that point, I
Love
had
that
to
for you
have
too.
and his face, the smile on his face, and he like skipped out of that room like, I'm getting great. I'm going to get this shoved up my nose and it's going to be great. And I'm going to dawdle back. Like he needed
Oh
that
my
fresh air.
gosh. Green light, I'm out.
Yeah,
And
poor
look,
guy.
and that is another thing in birth support as well, is you've got two people. So, if you're in a long labor, the labor I had a couple of weeks ago went for almost 2 days, not constantly in the hospital, but it was a long time in the hospital. And it allowed me to give, almost a feeling of permission to the partner and say, you need to have a sleep. Like you're no good to
Mm,
anybody right now unless you have a rest. So please rest. I'm here. And it gave him that permission to be able to step away or go and have a coffee or wash your face or whatever it was that he needed to do, because there was also someone there that wasn't going to leave her side.
yeah,
So, giving that permission to the partner to be like, oh, okay, all right, I do need to step out and I feel like I can do that.
yeah. Everyone needs a break.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
absolutely.
interesting because, I think women need, and men, obviously, the
Yep.
partners need um doulas, probably more so their first time around. It would be most beneficial and helpful probably the first time around when they are navigating all of it
Yep.
being very new to them.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the thing, when we're first pregnant, we don't know about doulas, and you don't really know about it until you're having your second or you're down the track. And, that's the hard thing. I mean, it's a hard thing with our business as well, as people don't understand how important nutritious meals are and how filling your freezer is really important, just setting yourself up for success in that postpartum period, because you don't know until you're in it. And
Absolutely.
it's just I know that we're all trying our best to, really educate women about looking after themselves during that postpartum period, and all of the resources and support that are available to them during that time. But golly, I wish that like in those initial um, appointments with the midwives at the hospital and stuff, I just wish there was a way to get the message across to them earlier. And
I agree. And look, social media has its benefits, and also sometimes, and we talked before about Googling, your husband was like, he couldn't even Google. Like, I think, oh gosh, please don't Google. But in saying that, the message is definitely getting out there.
mm,
But I think you're in the same boat as me. I wish we could just scream it to the rooftops, and people don't know what they don't know. And it's not until they've had the experience and they go, oh my gosh, now I get it. There's a lot
yeah,
of people these days that are like, don't buy flowers, buy meals. Like, fill up their
mm,
freezer with those nutritious meals, or don't buy flowers, go and help them around the house.
that's right.
There's definitely a movement, but we've still got a long way to go. And it does, and again, like I said, I'm sure you feel the same. I just wish it was happening quicker. Not for my business,
Yeah.
for women. I just wish for families that it was
Mm.
happening, it was getting out there more, so that there was more women actually being supported in their homes.
Because how you feel in that first 6 weeks, 6 months,
Yep.
6 years after
It's a
having a
wild ride.
baby, it just dictates everything that comes after. It
Yep.
dictates your mental health for the years to follow. Your physical health, your
Yep.
emotional health, all of it stems from how you're treated and how you feel and how you're looked after
Yep.
in those initial months. And you just, when you're in it, but leading up to it, and even when you're in it, you can't see those long-term consequences or long-term effects. But it's there, isn't it?
It is. And it's interesting, I don't know about other doulas, but I get a lot of bookings for birth, for first time births. And my postpartum bookings they're a mixed bag, but I get probably 50-50 of either first time postpartum clients, and these are people who I wasn't at the birth for. They'll book me purely for postpartum. But then the other 50% I get are second, third time round parents who are like, I am not doing this again alone. I need someone that I know that I can rely on every week, that comes into my home and does X, Y, and Z for me, not for anyone else, for me. And yeah, so I find that really interesting. There is a real mix. It's a solid 50-50 of parents who are coming in after having more than one child. They're like, I'm not doing that again. I want the support.
I remember my sister-in-law, she's got 3 kids, and I remember her obstetrician's parting gift to his clients was sending a doula to do a follow-up appointment or a couple of appointments. And I think the first time it was really helpful, but the second 2 times
Mm-hmm.
she engaged with her personally to come more than once, because she would come and she'd say, okay, you've got the newborn now, you've got a 2-year-old. This is what the new structure is going to look like. Here's how to manage the 2-year-old with the newborn. Here's where your partner's going to step in. He's now in charge of XYZ. This is what the day's going to look like. Here's how he's going to get to daycare. And just like mapping that out, having a
Mm-hmm.
sitting, like planning session
Yep.
to how the new world looks
Yep.
and how everyone can get through this period as unscathed as possible,
Yep.
and help the existing child kind of get
Adjust.
used to the
Yep.
new environment.
Yep.
I remember when she told me that, I don't think I'd had kids yet, but I was just like, wow, that sounds amazing. Like,
And also it allows you to
sorry.
not have to think, right? Like in those early
Mm,
days, especially when you've already got a child, your brain is just at capacity. And so you've got someone that walks in and says, right, let's do a postpartum planning session. Let's map this out.
mm,
Let's make this work for you and your partner and your older child. And then you think, oh, okay, this is
yeah.
achievable. Because if you don't have that at the time, it feels completely overwhelming. You're all running around like headless chooks, and you do feel like it's an unachievable goal for anything to be smooth. You just think, oh, it's meant to be chaos. That's life. Life's chaos, but it doesn't have to be, you
No.
know?
And having that external person come in and be the mediator between you and your partner as well, because during that time when you're so exhausted and it's a whole new world, you don't know what you're up against, and
Mm-hmm.
you definitely can't articulate your feelings or your thoughts because
Mm-hmm.
brains turn to mush for the minute. So yeah, having that external person come in and have that conversation with you guys so that you both understand your place in it and you don't have to battle it out with each other trying to work out who's saying what and who wants to do what, and you
Yep.
know.
But you can also express quite freely when there's someone else in the room how you're feeling. I get a lot of
Mm,
partners that open up because they feel like, okay, I can actually say this now because there's someone else sitting in the room, and they actually get to open up and express their feelings. The mother gets to open up and express her feelings, and it might sound like therapy, but it is, but it gets you
mm,
all on the same page, and then we can map it out from there.
mm,
And yeah, I think it's such a gift. I can't believe I've never heard of an obstetrician doing that, and I absolutely love it.
mm.
Whoever it is, amazing. I wish more did it.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Can I just touch back on when you started seeing a therapist, so you went to your GP, you got your mental health plan, just because I know people who have gone to see their GP having the same issues,
Hmm.
and yes, you're entitled to this mental health plan. Who do you want to see? Who do you want me to refer you to? But, and women don't know. They don't. Again, they jump on Google to see who maybe they could get a referral to. But where is the best place for someone to find who in their area might be able to help them if their GP doesn't have a list of people to refer new mothers onto? I mean, where are we finding this information?
Again, that I find a little bit like finding, the right doulas is going onto your local community pages. So, if you live in the eastern suburbs of Sydney, I'd be getting onto eastern suburbs mums pages and asking for recommendations if you don't have a friend that can recommend, because not all of us see a GP that we've seen since we were 20. Some of us are doing drop-in GPs, and it doesn't feel as personable to be recommended by your GP. They just could have a generic list and don't know a thing about them. So
Yeah.
I always think in anything that comes from to the heart and mental health, physical health, recommendation is key. The one that I got was through a recommendation. I had my mental health care plan, and then I jumped on one of the local Facebook pages and actually got a recommendation. And a good therapist will also give you the opportunity to have a conversation with them before booking, because again, a little bit like a doula and those services, it needs to connect. And if it doesn't connect, and then you've wasted, it means a lot to have those mental health care plans. You only get 10 of them, and then you're paying full price. So you want to
I'm
make.
sorry. Let's explain the mental health plan in case people don't understand it. So if you go and see your GP and you talk about whether you're struggling or
Yep.
what your issues are at that time,
Yep.
and then they can put you on a mental health plan. And what that means is that you get 10 visits with a specialist,
Yep.
subsidized by the government, not fully covered, but heavily
Not fully
subsidized.
covered, and different ones will cover more or less depending on their fees, depending on their private fees. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And then
That's
once
good.
you've run out of it, you can also go back and request more. So it's not
Okay.
like you use those 10 and you're done. You can actually get more. And depending on where you're at as well, there are some amazing free services as well. Like, if you just really want to talk to someone, you've got like the Gidget Foundation. There's so many online. Cope is really fantastic. There's a lot of ones to do with loss as well. And there's a lot of free services online. So just Googling mental health, parenthood mental health, and there's some fantastic ones. I think a lot of our websites would have them at the bottom as well,
Our website.
because not everything costs. Not everything costs, and there's a lot of free 24-hour helplines for parents. Obviously, you wouldn't be able to do it all the time, and even through the hospital as well, actually. So if you're in your early postpartum and you're really struggling, you can absolutely call up the hospital that you had your baby in, and they will have avenues for you to have free hotline conversations as well. So, at the moment, people are doing it tough, and I would hate to think that people think that there's no help out there, that's that everything has to cost money. There are free helplines out there as well that you can go to. And then if you are really in the trenches, and you're feeling severely depressed and you need more hands-on help, there are places like, I think it's called St John of God, down near the Shire, where they do like 3-week stays. So if you get a referral by your GP, you can actually stay with your baby, and they have all the help that you would need if you're really, really struggling, and you get a referral from your doctor, and I don't think you're out of pocket for that either.
Yeah, well, that's good, isn't it?
Yeah. And again, that's another part of people feeling like they've got no one, not even talking about the services that we provide, but there are free services out there for mental health. And when your hormones are going crazy and your milk's first coming in and you can't stop crying, and, we talk about those hormones being quite normal, but if those feelings are extending over a longer period of time, and this is something for partners to know as well, and to recognize if it's not getting better, then that's when we do need to reach out for help, or for someone to come in and help you. I think it's really important, because it's
And
not
sometimes
normal.
getting to the GP can feel like you've got a newborn. It can feel like a bit of a mission. And then once you get your plan and you try and book into something, that can take a while
Yep,
in itself. So it is good that we've got the hotlines available that you can just jump
absolutely.
on
Yep,
this afternoon.
absolutely. Yep.
Um, yeah, it is good. It is hard when you're in it to try and work out where to turn,
And you're right,
because
though, like getting to a GP appointment and then having to wait and then calling. So, I mean, I've had clients where I've actually taken them to the GP and been with them and waited with the bub and helped them make the phone calls and get that ball rolling, because
it's a lot of effort.
even the simplest thing normally is not so simple anymore. They
No,
all feel tedious at times. Yeah.
yeah. Moving on to you, recently posted something on your Instagram that captured my attention, and it was about communicating effectively with your partner during the sleep deprivation, I think, something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I'd just love to hear kind of any tips or guidance that you have for couples that have children, and your whole world change. I don't think people prepare enough for how their relationship does change when they have children. Um, you could see it. Like I remember I used to watch people go through pregnancy was all lovey-dovey, and then they'd have the baby. It was pretty lovey-dovey, and just slowly
Yep.
you would just start
Move
speaking to
away.
each other in
Yep.
completely different tones, and you could see the resentment seething out of them, and
Hmm.
cracks forming. And I think it, to a degree, is pretty normal in the journey of a relationship after
Hmm.
children. You both become new people, you both become parents, you're both learning how to look after somebody else. Everyone's priorities shift, everyone's needs aren't necessarily being met as they were before,
Hmm.
and communication breaks down because you're exhausted, and they don't understand what you're going through and how you feel inside, and you don't understand or maybe care how they feel, because you think that you have to go to work every day,
Well,
or
there's the
whatever the
building block.
situation
Yeah. Yeah.
is. But it's a hard time to articulate your thoughts and feelings. And I don't think it's just 6 weeks or 12 months. I think it's 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So yeah, you've got
Well,
experience. You've seen many couples go through it, and you're living your own
yeah, look,
experience.
and we say, it can be 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years, and it all depends on how you start. Because if you haven't addressed and worked out a good communication style early on, and that when I say, you may have already thought you had a good communication style before you had children, but as you mentioned before, things change, everything changes. So if you haven't worked on that from the beginning and addressed that, and to be honest, addressed it in pregnancy and worked out and had some discussions before you actually have your baby, you can be talking 6 years, 16 years, and your relationship is kind of diminished. So, and I'm not going to make it sound like it's all doom and gloom. It's just statistically, a lot of parents' relationships break down after they've had children, and it does come a lot down to how you communicate and preparing. So, I I feel like I wear a lot of hats, but I also did a facilitation. I teach couples. It's called the Prepare for Parenthood. I don't know if you've ever read the book Becoming Us. So it's written by an Australian author. She's amazing. Her name's Ellie Taylor, and so I actually did her course to become a facilitator to teach parents how to prepare for parenthood. And ideally, you would do that in pregnancy. And a big part of it is talking about our expectations. So in pregnancy, really sitting down and saying, what's our expectation and what's our reality? Talking about, okay, this is, if you imagine a clock and you've got a certain amount of hours in your day, and these are all of the things that are allocated over the hours of our day, but then throw in a baby. We've got one person going to work. The baby needs to be fed, changed, rocked, slept. We have to feed ourselves. We have to shower. Well, ideally, we have to shower. Um, and yet, what happens with all of those other day-to-day things that happen? The washing, the groceries, the cooking of the meals. Whose responsibility is that? So not talking about it when you're in your throes of postpartum and you're tired and you're resentful that your partner gets to go to work all day and have adult conversations and you've been at home cleaning up a baby's nappy. It's actually talking about it early on and before you're in the throes of it. And if you're already in the throes of it, to parents who are already in it going, well, great, well, where's the hope for
Yeah,
me? There is absolutely hope. It just means that you need to sit down now, absolutely sit down now and say, okay, without judgment, this is how I'm feeling. So don't you. There's another key thing is you never talking to the person like you're doing this, you're doing that. Talk about yourself only. This is how I'm feeling. This is what I need. And this is how I would like to receive it. And the partner then gets to in turn not talk about you. This is how I feel. This is what I need. And you can start to build the blocks from there. So if you're both talking in myself and how I'm feeling and map out ways it can work. A lot of this may not be a favorite thing to suggest, but this is something I do suggest to couples, and it worked. It's not going to work for everyone, but it worked for my husband and I. And it does, a lot of partners quite like doing this in the early days. If you have a child that is not sleeping and someone's going to work every day, yes, we're at home very much working as well. I completely get that. But my partner, we ended up turning my daughter's nursery into a spare room, and 3 to 4 nights a week, he slept in there and he got a full night's sleep unless I really needed him. So I said, I want you to have a full night's sleep for 3 nights or 4 nights a week. I'm going to, I'll get up obviously in the night. She's co-sleeping or she's sleeping in the room with me. But in turn, I need you to be 100% on and 100% present when you walk in that door after work. I need this. This is what I need. And I need you to do the groceries. Like I mapped out all the things I needed, but that was the trade-off. He was going to get 3 or 4 nights sleep, full sleep,
yeah,
unless it was hell and I wasn't coping, and I'd knock on the door and go, I really need your help. And then on
yeah,
the weekends, he on a Friday night, Saturday night, and a Sunday would actually take a role in staying up and helping me with her. So it would mean I would go to bed at 7 o'clock when my other two went to bed. He would stay up, do all of like we do a bottle bath. For those who are breastfeeding, you could look at doing an express or even do the feed and then hop straight into bed, get as much sleep as you can. And my husband would stay up and do up until he'd nap and then do the midnight feed. And so I knew I had from 7 till almost midnight for 3 nights where I could have a stint of sleep. And I also
Yeah.
knew that all the days of the week, the pressure was now taken off for me the expectation of the house to be clean was gone. The expectation that I had to have a full cooked meal on the table was gone. And it's not about like letting your house completely turn itself upside down, but as mothers or as women, I think, without generalizing, we put this pressure on ourselves. And the moment we say it out loud, and then your partner says, but I didn't ask for the house to be clean. And
Yeah.
I don't expect all of those things to be done. And then you think, oh,
Yeah.
okay, but you've never talked about it. You've
Yeah.
never actually had, it's almost like you should never have to have permission, but it's almost like you're giving this permission slip that I can actually just stop. Like, how nice is it just to stop and just be with your child and be with your
Yeah.
baby and know that when your partner comes home, you've already established that you want him to take your bub. You want to have a really beautiful long hot shower. You might want to go for a walk in the fresh air, but you know that your
Yeah.
partner, you've made that contract. You've made that verbal contract with each other. Um, so I know I've just gone around in a really long-winded answer, but like working out how to communicate with each other would be such a key part in how to get things feeling like it's more balanced. Because that's what it
Yeah.
is. At the end of the day, there's a feeling of not having the balance between the two of you anymore.
No, and it's, it's you mentioned like the cooking of the dinner or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
There's that side of things, and that's sometimes they can think, well, I'll cook dinner or I'll
Mm-hmm.
clean the house. But it's like, okay, but I'll do the shopping.
Mm-hmm.
But who's coming up with the list? Who's coming up with the meal plan? Who understands what needs to be washed for daycare tomorrow? Who, it's the mental load.
Yep.
And I think trying to articulate the mental load to, I'm going to say just men.
Mm-hmm.
It's just they just don't. I mean, you can speak till you're blue in the face about it. It's just they can just never understand how heavy that can feel. Like, and it's all inside. Even if they're doing all the physical stuff,
Mm-hmm.
it's just the load is heavy, right?
It took me many years, and when I say many, probably only up until the last 2 years of parenthood, um, to learn to let go of the list. And I know people who are listening to this are going to go, what do you mean? But allow your partner, am I allowed to swear on here? Allow your
Mm.
partner to stuff up. Like, allow them to mess up the clothes for daycare.
Yeah,
Like, allow them to buy all the wrong stuff at the supermarket because we're so busy micromanaging them to make sure that everything's perfect, but it's at our own detriment. It's at
yeah,
our own detriment. And even, I would suggest to, we spend all the days with our bub while they go to work. And then when they come home, I'm sure many of you can relate to this, that, we go, oh no, this is the best way to settle them. No, if you do it like this, they'll go to sleep quicker. Let them find their way. And you know
yeah,
what? In the beginning, maybe it will be harder for him to get your baby down, but they will find their rhythm. And unless they ask for the help, it's a little bit like us when someone comes in and says, oh, no, don't you think it's better if you do it like this? And you're like, excuse me,
yeah,
I know
yeah,
what I'm doing. So a little bit of like actually surrendering and letting it go and going, you know what? And it's not trying to teach someone a lesson. It's literally to allow them to make the mistakes. They can find their way of doing it. And it might be
yeah.
different, but they might get the same result. It's a tough one, I know, but I said it's
It is
taken
a
me
tough
many
one.
years, but I'm definitely much further there, and my mental load now gets to focus on things such as my business and allow my brain to be busy with those things. And I'm away at the moment, and I literally did not a single thing other than pack my bag and walk out of the house, and my husband's doing it all. And you know what? He
There's
can complain and he can say all the things if he wants to, but he's got it and he'll work it out. And I don't think about the state of the house. I don't think what they've been fed. I'm like, it will be what it is. That's it.
yeah. I have a lot of mum chats, and it's it a lot of people you have to stop yourself from setting their house up for their day together. Or like I went out yesterday and they were going out, they were going
Mm-hmm.
on an adventure, and I was getting ready, and then I just, I packed the bag of snacks, and then I got the change of clothes in case they need it,
Yes.
and then I water bottles, and then I got a nappy in case Pat falls asleep.
Yes.
And just like
You've
stop. Like
just
he's
done it
not
all.
going to Mars.
You've
If
just
he
done it
forgets
all.
something, he's stopping at a packet of chips. Like
Yep.
it's not like they're gonna stuff. But
it's a really hard it's a really hard one to let go of, and I totally get it. And there's times where I find I fall back into it, but it is honestly the most freeing feeling. Just and put yourself in the other position. You're basically micromanaging someone,
yeah,
and they're
it's
never going to
offensive.
learn and be able to do it themselves if you don't. But it's a very hard one not to do. But in early
Yeah, you
parenthood, if
just
it
want
was,
them to have like the best time as well. You want everyone to be happy and dry and fed, and you know, and when we do let them just do it,
Mhm.
you get the videos in the mum chats of like just like the chaos getting home from like a week away,
Yeah,
a weekend or whatever
yeah,
it is, and just like, the chaos of the house.
yeah.
Um,
Did
but
you ever watch
everyone's
have you ever watched the Bluey episode where the dad takes the kids to the swimming pool, to the public swimming pool,
like,
and he
yes,
forgets? And I think I remember seeing it for the first time, and I
so
literally looked at my
do it.
husband, and he's like, I know. But do you know what? It's okay. Like,
Yeah,
and a little bit,
it's
when we talk about, oh, but then they won't have a good time. As your kids get older, I'll talk in the years of my children now, particularly the elder two, like it also is teaching them that things aren't always going to be perfect, and people stuff up and people forget things. And if everything is always in its perfect place, in its perfect box, they're never actually going to learn to be
yeah,
resilient to when things don't go
yes,
right. So when we talk about, a lot of the people that are listening are probably in their, really early postpartum, or they could be pregnant, or in their first 6 to 12 months. We flash forward to, my high school children, and we giggle about it. Like things go wrong, and we're like, "Oh, Dad," like, or it could be Mum.
yeah,
"Oh, Mum, like, what were you thinking?" It becomes funny instead of a stress.
yeah.
It's just how it is sometimes.
Yes, everyone's learning. Everyone's
We
learning,
are.
and
We're
everyone
all
needs
learning. It's a wild ride. Parenthood is wild. We
to.
put so much emphasis on our pregnancy and birth, but to be honest, I think that the real learnings and preparation comes in learning how to prepare for
And
parenthood.
I think most people have that feeling when, if you're in the hospital to give birth, and they say that you can go home, and then there's one point that everyone has, I reckon, and whether you're walking to the car or you're in the car or you're opening the front door when you get home, and everyone is like, "I can't believe they let us take this baby
Yes.
home.
Yes.
What are we, like? We don't know what we're doing. Do they
Yep.
know that we don't know what we're doing?"
Yep.
Everyone, I reckon, has that.
Everybody. And it's not even the first time. Like the second time, when I came home with Lily, I remember. So for my son, it was when I got home and put him in our room. Like he'd been in NICU for 3 months, and it was really emotional having him home. And for Lily, it was like putting her in the car seat and hopping in the front seat and going, "Oh my gosh, like we've got to bring this tiny little human in a vehicle." Even people getting in the car with their children for the first time, it's like this
You
precious
know,
little thing, and I've got to get on the roads with them. Like,
oh God.
I think every parent has that moment of holy shit, this is
Yeah,
this is real. This is
yeah,
our future. Yeah, it's pretty
yeah,
special, but also daunting.
yeah. It's a ride.
It's a wild ride. There's no other way to call it. It's a wild ride.
I'm
Park and
glad to
load.
hear that you, um, now with your 6-year-old, six, seven,
Seven, seven.
Lily,
Yeah.
7. People seem to get to 6 or 7 and suddenly they kind of take a breath.
Yep.
Everyone seems to get that point and look at me and go, "It's all right. Like you're almost there.
Yep.
You're
Yep.
almost out of it." And I know we've spoken before about you're never really out of it. You're just into something different, and,
It
and it's
is.
always kind of a little bit harder, but it's just a different
It is
phase.
different, but it's different worries. But I have to, obviously, when you are their sole need to have their butt wiped, to make their meals, to do all the things in the day to day when they're younger, it takes a lot of energy as a parent to do all of those things. So, when they're hitting that 6, 7 mark and they can make their bowl of cereal in the morning, or you can say, "Lily, go upstairs, it's time to get ready for school," and they'll go upstairs and get ready for school. Like having that autonomy as your children get older definitely does make it easier for sure, because they're able to do the things that you were solely reliant on for them to get ready and do. So it definitely does get easier like that. It's just different hard in the sense of, you know, life worries, teenagers, all the
Yeah,
things,
my
but
kids are leaving.
yeah.
All right, lovely. It's been so lovely to chat with you about postpartum and navigating parenthood and all of those lovely things. If anyone wants to find you, where are they best to look for you?
Yeah, so they can find me on my Instagram or on the website, which is just thedoulapod.com.au, or Instagram, it's the Doula Pod.
Yeah, lovely. All right, great. I'll link those in the show notes so people can find you as well.
Amazing.
But
Thank you so much for having me. I love what you guys are doing as well. It's so important.
thank you. All right, we'll talk later.
Thanks so much.